Hello there and a warm welcome to SA Decides, our evening edition. I'm Audrey Chimwanda. It's been 62 days now to go for the elections, and the biggest story of the day is the local government audit results. The Auditor General released the financial report, and here are the highlights. Clean audits are up from 13 to 54, but irregular expenditure doubles since 2010 to 2011. Western Cape tops the charts with 73% clean audits. Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal come a distant second and third, respectively. Municipalities in Limpopo and the Northwest, as well as the Northern Cape, yet to pull up their socks. Auditor General says the governance systems are still weak. There is both good news and bad from the audit results. While the number of municipalities that received clean audits has shot up from 13 to 54, there is over 200% hike in irregular expenditure. Our reporter Nobuhle Nkoma found this report.
The Auditor General report has indicated that the Western Cape continues to be the leading province with the cleanest municipal audits, followed by Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. Kimi Makwetu says the success in these provinces have proved the value of investing in strengthening internal control, valuing stability in the administration of municipalities, and the taking of decisive action on both internal control failings and audit findings.
The combination of the Western Cape, Gauteng, and KwaZulu-Natal province represent those three provinces that have the largest number of clean audits, and the Western Cape, as you can see, leading them. We also want to take note of the fact that while we pay attention to each of these provinces, we also want not to forget the fact that there are still some significant weaknesses in certain areas within these provinces.
The expenditure budget for 2014-2015 totaled 347 billion rands, with 39% of that representing clean audit opinions. Unqualified audit opinions with findings represent 41%, while municipalities with qualified audit opinions made up 14%.
Of all these 272 municipalities that we are auditing on, they had a combined total expenditure budget of about 347 billion. Compared to last year's number that we reported on, which was about 315 billion. So these municipalities that spent all of this 347 billion, we are also analyzing them in this report with regards to what component of which municipalities got what type of audit opinion.
Irregular expenditure has more than doubled since the 2010-2011 period to 14.75 billion rands. Fruitless and wasteful expenditure spiked by more than 1 billion rands in the past 5 years.
In terms of the report for all of the 9 provinces combined and all of the 272 municipalities, we are recording and reporting a total amount of 14.75 billion with regards to this irregular expenditure. This irregular expenditure, to give more context and substance to it, is those instances where the prescribed rules that govern the procurement of goods and services, among others, are not always observed. And for the audit, the minimum that we are required to do is to identify those instances, engage with those matters with management of the entity, and report on them if we are not getting satisfactory responses.
Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister welcomed the audits and has ensured that interventions on accountability are in place.
We are preoccupied with ensuring that there are repercussions for identified wrongdoings. We can't allow a situation whereby, as part of our consequence management system, identified weaknesses, people don't pay the price for such. People must obviously take responsibility, for their actions.
Municipalities have shown an encouraging improvement over the last 5 years. However, the reality is 92% of those municipalities have been rated as either concerning or requiring intervention. It's yet to be seen whether efforts for intervention by SALGA and COPTA will continue to succeed. Nobuhle Nkoma, NN7, Tshwane.
And joining me now in studio to unpack on the Auditor General's report and statistics today is Fikile Bili. He is a local government consultant. We also have Kevin Malham. He's the DA Shadow Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. And in a while, we'll also be joined by SPD Skosana. He's a SANCO member, and Narius Moloto, Secretary General for PAC, which is the Pan-Africanist Congress. I'm sure they're stuck in traffic somewhere, so we're hoping they'll join us in a bit. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll start with you, Mr. Bili. The AG's report says a lot of irregular expenditure that has actually doubled since the past 5 years. Should we be surprised? And, what are your thoughts on this?
I don't think as South Africans we should be surprised, simply because in my space of work I'm into municipalities. And I come across very incompetent municipal officials. And then when you raise these questions, you are seen as someone who cannot, take directive or mandate. But the reality is, I always say to municipalities that municipalities are the nearest department to the people. Municipalities are the pride of the people. Now we have to deploy men and women with credibility and qualifications, and expertise. So at the end of the day, I'm not surprised with the outcome, simply because we don't have capacity to serve our people on the ground.
Absolutely. Mr. Malham, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Audrey.
Mr. Bili speaks of personnel that are not qualified to manage these municipalities. Is there any consequences? I mean, do we see any accountability when we have reports such as these of irregular expenditure and wasteful expenditure doubling for the past 5 years?
I think the starting point needs to be that we must differentiate between irregular expenditure, fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and unauthorized expenditure. Irregular expenditure is when it hasn't followed the correct process. Fruitless and wasteful expenditure is where money has literally been poured down the drain. It's been spent on something that it shouldn't have been spent on, or whatever. And unauthorized is where the council has not approved a budget or there has been overspending on a budget. Now, the problem that we have is that there is a distinct lack of consequences. The AG identifies this himself in his report. He says the consequence management of municipalities and of government generally is very, very poor. And this is evidenced by, for example, where mayors are found criminally guilty of fraud or corruption, and they get promoted to another sphere of government. I can point to two from my own neck of the woods, Buffalo City, that have been criminally charged and moved to the National Assembly. And there's just no consequences. The ANC does not hold people accountable for their actions.
Absolutely, and that brings me to my next point. I'll ask Mr. Bili to respond to this. Political appointments. We have people who, like you've alluded to, who are in these positions but are not competent enough to, to hold their duties and exercise them. How does this affect, the running of municipalities when you have people that are actually competent, but because they haven't been appointed politically?
Listen, I am of the view that, for example, we need to differentiate between who is the political head, who's the administrative head. You find in most instances a municipal manager is been given mandate by a mayor who does not have qualifications. Do you understand that situation?
Right. And
sometimes you find that a chief financial officer is been given mandate by the councillors who have their own interest, to loot the resources that were supposed to go to the people. As much as we say who's at fault, who's not at fault, we need to go back to basics as a nation and say, are we going to use municipalities as low-hanging fruits, or are we going to use municipality as the pride of the people? I get to work with municipalities. Not all of them are that bad. I can mention municipalities, for example, that has improved drastically. Like, for instance, the municipality that is under Mr. Fesser and Mr. Emmanuel in the Mtanjeni in the Northern Cape. That municipality is number 9 in the country, it's number 1 in the Northern Cape. They don't have a big budget, do you understand me? And then I can emphasize on other municipalities like City of Tshwane. They might have their political differences and all those things, but at the end of the day, it's the most professional municipality. We come across...
I think I disagree on that.
No. City of Tshwane under Ramakgopa is very much efficient. I don't have a problem with politics. I'm not into politics, but I'm a service provider at City of Tshwane. Service providers will never come to you and say, I've been paid 3 months later, because they've got an automated payment system at City of Tshwane. Yes,
Right.
they are delivering City of Tshwane. We can see the latest development of RDP houses, which was actually designed by a black dude in Tshwane. You know, they are rolling out houses that we've never seen in in any province. It only happens in Gauteng. And currently they've got a good bus system. And I've never seen so many potholes in the City of Tshwane. So the reality is, let's not go to politics, let's go to deliverance.
Okay.
They get clean audits, and I think politically they are sober, but going forward I think they can also improve. But going to other provinces that I've seen, you see, if you give power to one person to appoint MECs, municipal managers, CFOs, councillors, then you have killed the people on the ground. We need to go back to basic and say, do you qualify as the municipal manager? Who can we get on board, for example, private companies that can come on board and screen these people to see that we've got men and women of credibility. Like going back to you, I say the Northern Cape, this municipality has done wonders. It's the only municipality in the Northern Cape that has done very well. So we need to give credit where it's due, but where they don't perform, we should not be biased because, you know, we want to save face.
Right.
If
A very
municipalities
important screening process to make sure we have competent people in position. Mr. Malham, I see you about to jump out of your seat. You're dying to respond.
I just think
to
that
Mr.
there's a
Billy
couple of
here.
things here. First of all, there are minimum competencies that are required of CFOs, heads of supply chain, Section 57 directors, and municipal managers. And all of these people have had years and years and years to get those in place. The document or the regulations were passed, I think, in 2010. And they've had at least 6 years to get those qualifications, to get those competencies. Now, what we're seeing is that many of them still do not have competencies. After the elections, when new councils are appointed, and new directors and new municipal managers and so on are appointed, there are going to be more people coming in that have got no competency. So I agree with that there are incompetent people. Where I disagree is that we can't hold up a city like Tshwane as an example of good governance. City of Tshwane went against a National Treasury directive. They went against the Minister's directive, the Minister of Finance at the time, Pravin Gordhan, who's now again our Minister of Finance. And they went and installed smart meters, R1 billion smart meter project, more than R1 billion, it's nearly R2 billion. That's irregular expenditure. Now, you can't hold that up as good an example of good governance. In fact, they are identified in today's audit report as being one of the metros with a problem with good governance. So yes, we've got to have competent people, but equally, we've got to have the political will to make sure that those people are doing the right thing and that they are being directed in the right manner. And there I agree that it's not about politics. It's about making sure that people follow the procedures, that what they are doing is in the best interests of the people on the ground.
Absolutely, and those are huge amounts of money you're talking about. Is there, I'm just wondering, a general cavalier attitude towards public funds, Mr. Billy?
Okay, going back on the tender that is talking about of smart meters in City of Tshwane, I saw it myself. I didn't go for it because I had my doubts. But if City of Tshwane did appoint probably more than one company, I think the rollout could have been much better and professional. I don't want to protect them on that one. If the Auditor General found them guilty, then obviously now they have to take the beating for that.
And were there any consequences for that?
I would never say yes or no, because at the end of the day, it's all about the political dynamics. You know, who do they favor and all those things. But all I'm saying, going forward, as a country, as a nation, we should stop sitting back and thinking that if we sit back and keep quiet, these people are going to do the right things. We must go out there and tell these councillors and tell these politicians and even tell these administrators that you mess up with the budget of the municipality, you're out. Because at the end of the day, you know what pains me most is when I drive in a municipality, you find we still have street kids, we still have child-headed home families. But the nicest thing about government today, you know, I will never criticize ANC government altogether when I know there are people out there who can get credit. There's a mayor in Mpumalanga called Bhekabantu Mtshali. Bhekabantu means look after the people. That mayor will say to me, Fikile, I need money. And I'll ask him, what do you need money for? He will say, I need money to buy training shoes. I need to book a combi. I need to book accommodation for who? He said the youth in my municipality in Piet Retief are going to the Comrades Marathon. He will say to me, Fikile, we need a cow. We've got a traditional ceremony in Ntombi ziyahlolwa ngesintu, isiZulu. He will do that. And I'll ask him, why don't you want something? He said, no, my wife is a medical doctor. I'm a mayor, the budget's enough for me to sustain myself. You know, that is one of the most brilliant mayor that I've ever come across in my life, who is more community driven. So it's not all that bad. There are those who've got credibility, but there are those who are under pressure because they've been deployed. Now, I want to say this today. Let's professionalize municipalities. Let's make sure that the future of municipal managers is secured. Let's make sure that our directors and chief financial officers are secured in their jobs. And let's put systems in place that will guide and even show the ruling party, the opposition, the auditor general, even the community, what is the progress made at the municipalities. Now, I'm saying we need level-headed men and women to govern. Sometimes, yes, you might think the opposition, when they criticize the ruling party, they are better. Sometimes politicians don't even fight to remove the other one. They also want the same bread. You understand what I mean? So the only way to reduce this infighting in politics is when we put good systems in municipalities that will make sure that no one can loot. Because at the end of the day, when no one can loot, you will see the interest to become councillors is going to reduce drastically.
Mr. Malham, are the structures in municipal governments weak and give way for corruption?
Look, I think the starting point is that our systems that we have, our legislation that we have, our regulations that we have, both from COGTA and from National Treasury, are very strong. The problem is the implementation in the municipalities. And that's a big issue. And Mr. Bili has correctly identified that we need competent people in the municipalities to roll those systems and structures out. But equally, at a national and provincial level, you've got to have strong leadership that is prepared to take the hard decisions, to say, you're not performing, let's step in and help you. And what we are seeing increasingly is the reluctance of the provincial governments to intervene in municipalities. And where they do intervene, they're very ineffectual. Now, if you had a competent provincial government that was prepared to assist a municipality, take over the administration for a short period, with the permission of national government in terms of Section 139 of the Constitution, and put in place the systems and then train up the people in that municipality, we'd start seeing an improvement. But again, what we are seeing is a reluctance from provincial government because they don't want to embarrass the people in charge. They don't want to embarrass the politicians that are in charge.
Again, accountability is an issue. Let's steer the conversation now to the collection of revenue.
Yeah.
How good are we at that, and how much of that contributes to the deaths in municipalities?
It's good and bad news. And the good news is that in many of our metros, our revenue collection is fairly good, in the 90% plus range. But in our rural areas, it's not. We have a historic problem with debt collection. We have a historic problem where people who were opposed to apartheid were told as part of the struggle, don't pay your services, bring the government to its knees by not paying your services. Now that we're in a free South Africa, those people are saying, why should I pay for services? I fought for the struggle, I fought for free electricity, free water. So there's that issue as well. We've got indigent services that provide free basic services to a lot of people. And so we get 50 kilowatt hours of electricity, 6 kiloliters of free basic water. But many municipalities aren't able to measure that. They aren't able to roll that out. They can't make sure that the right people are getting it. And so their revenue collection drops.
Right.
Equally, their debt collection, their actual physically going to the customer and saying, I want to get money from you, is just about non-existent in most municipalities.
But you know
yes,
what?
You can respond to that.
I can hear what my colleague is saying here, but you must also take to consideration that prior to 94, I'm working with municipalities. I just got a municipality handing over a debt book to me where I picked up that there's only one ID number in the entire book. Now, but prior to 94, those who were in charge before did mess up with the system. They made sure, I came across, when I do data cleansing, I came across that someone had 18 properties, but only one was registered. Right. Someone built a block of townhouses, 14 units, and register only unit number 1 and rent out to people with water and electricity included because he has colluded. Now, I'm saying, let's go back to basics. I've done a data cleansing where I've come across councillors who are indigents. I've done a data cleansing where I've come across that if you quit the municipality, you are registered as an indigent. And one day I had a fallout with the mayor where they were campaigning looking for indigents. And I did my investigation. I discovered that people go around and register people wrongly and fraudulently as indigents because the more indigents you have, the more allocation you get from Treasury. So I did not like that because we need to rehabilitate our people. Yeah. Yes, when we took over, we came with this free basic service. But the same community also is taking advantage of this government by exploiting the opportunities that are there. Even other politicians also go around and register people as indigents to remain politically relevant in their wards. I'm working now in a municipality called Pokwani in Hartswater in the Northern Cape. We just collected 500,000 from one client who had an arrangement of 8,000 rand on 500,000. I changed that. Zolile Debedu and Andres Motsama, I changed that in my office. I work in Kuruman in a municipality called Khasofonye.
How did you change it?
No, I do rearrangements. If you did have an arrangement with the municipality, they must cancel it because I'm going to do a data cleansing. If your husband gets 10,000, you get 10,000, you've got 20,000 income. You can't have an arrangement of 250 rand. That is 5 years arrangement.
So you raise the amount so that the debt is quickly
because
cleared.
Municipalities need to recover. And then we went to a municipality which has a deputy CFO in Khasekhonyane in the Northern Cape in Kuruman. Government of the Northern Cape is paying us large sums of money because they just have a deputy CFO who's acting currently, who's very focused. You know, we are working together. I think we are collecting over 5 million to 9 million a month. So what I'm trying to say is that when we put men and women of credibility, we are going to root out all these things. Now, the other thing is, when the ANC-led government took over, they had no expertise on billing systems and revenue expertise. So when these other previous political parties hand over things to them, they did really damage quite a number of things. For example, in the local municipalities today, you still find companies who are in the apartheid system are still offering billing systems, even in the new democracy, simply because the current municipal employees don't know how to use a billing system. Some of them don't know even how to send a book analysis or even a debt book, even a payment file, because of why? Skills were never transferred.
Again, incompetence is an issue. I have to interrupt you there, Mr. Billy. I have to welcome to the conversation. One of our guests has arrived, SPD Skhosana. He is a SANCO member. Very good evening to you, Mr. Skhosana. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
I'll pose this question to you, just to warm you up to the conversation that has already started. Local government appeals to most South Africans at grassroots levels. It appeals to them more than the national government. In terms of communication structures, where do you think we are 22 years later?
Well, good evening and good evening to your viewers. Well, as SANCO, we're quite happy now that we've got the new government, because critical to everything that is happening, public participation becomes the key. Whatever you want to do with government, if you don't talk to the communities, you are lost, because everything and anything that you do in the communities, it's got to be community driven, and communities must have spoken on those issues. I want to agree with my learned friend, Mr. Billy, that all of these municipalities, as you see them now, with community involvement and participation, you can't go wrong very much on issues that you are handling. The critical to everything that is there, you need to have the willingness from those who are occupying the offices of authority to be able to listen to what the communities are saying and be able to respond to those issues that communities are putting forward. But you must also have people with skill, people that will have the expertise in how to handle some of these matters. And the level of participation and understanding of those issues is also very important.
Well, clearly, you've raised the same points that we have been talking about for the past couple of minutes. Competence is very important in municipalities. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, gentlemen. I have to thank you. With me in studio was Fikile Bili, local government consultant. We also had Mr. Kevin Malham. He is a DA Shadow Minister of COGTA, and also they just joined us. Unfortunately, again, we have run out of time. SANCO member SPD Skosana. It's time for a very short break.